Hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Miss Coffee here, and today we're doing a whip and chat. Whip stands for work in progress. So get out whatever it is you're working on. Work along with me as I tell you some stories from the coffee house shenanigans. Now I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. We had a pretty good weekend here at the coffee house, and we're going to talk about it. So let's see. Friday we had a really good live over on Twitch. There was a little hiccup, but nothing too major. By the time live was over, I was exhausted. I was spent. I was done. And I went up front to Mr. Coffee and I was like, look, listen, I'm ready for bed. Can we go to bed now? And so we ended up going straight to bed after I was finished live on Friday. Saturday we had another really good live, and I decided that I was going to sit back here for a little bit while Mr. Coffee played his game. Mr. Coffee had to go into work for a little bit. And so because the kids were already preoccupied with like their friends and stuff, I was like, why don't, I could just sit back here and play my game, because I wanted to play Sims for a little bit. Because one of the things I've never done in The Sims, now I've played The Sims since the Sims first came out. Like I literally have the first 2 discs still for The Sims. And one of the things I've never really done in The Sims is build a house. And my friend Shadow was over on Twitch streaming Twitch on Saturday, and he was building a house. He likes to build houses, and so I was like, I'm gonna try to build a house along with him. And I was watching him while I built my very first house in The Sims, and I was so super proud of myself because I was like, look at me, I built a house in The Sims. Now, growing up, did you play The Sims? And if you did, do you like the new Sims if you've played it? We've been playing Sims 4 now over on Twitch for a while. I love the new Sims. They just added the infants, where the infants crawl and like act like infants. And y'all, I've never met more needy kids in my entire life. These infants in this game put Maggie to shame. Okay, let me just tell you that right now. These infants put Maggie to shame. I was like, why are these kids so freaking needy? Oh my god. So I decided, you know what? I don't want to play the game like play the game. I just want to build a house. So I spent like hours building this house. I built it. It's not the best looking house, but I built it and I did it myself, and I was proud. And so I was like, okay, I should probably go up front now to go hang out with Mr. Coffee, because I had some stuff that I need to get done. And so I went ahead and got some stuff done that I needed to get done, and then it was already pretty late, so we again had went to bed. The kids had played until dark and then came home, and the little kids that we thought had left for summer vacation only left for a couple of days. But in that time, it was so peaceful in the neighborhood. Like the kids have been just having a blast outside with the other kids. The funny thing is, as soon as the other kids in the neighborhood all came out and were playing nicely at the playground and riding their scooters and like just having a great time. Like I was the neighborhood popsicle mom apparently, and the kids came here to get popsicles so that they could be outside longer to play. And I don't mind, giving the kids popsicles, because everybody was playing and having a good time. There was like 30 kids outside, all just playing and having a good time. And it's funny because the moment these other kids came back, all the kids from the neighborhood stopped coming outside again. And I was like, okay, so it's not just me and my kids. And I asked one of the moms, and I was like, hey, I noticed that, the kids haven't been outside much. Is everything okay? Or, are they on punishment or something? And she goes, oh no, the bad kids are back. So we don't let them out as much when the bad kids are back, because the one little girl is always trying to like attack our kids. And I was like, okay, so it's not just me. Like the little girl has actually been having issues with all the kids in the neighborhood, and it's not just my kids. And she goes, oh no. She goes, we've been having problems with them since they first moved in. Their daughter curses and yells at people, and I just don't want that around my kids, so I don't let them out as much. They do a lot of indoor activities around that time. And I'm like, all right, I get it. Now my thing is, I'm not gonna make my kids a prisoner for those kids. So I will still let my kids outside. I just ask them that they play in the back, or they play together outside, so that if something were to happen, one of them can come back and tell me. So I'm like, okay, I get it. So that's been kind of happening around the house here. What else has been happening? I got hit with the realization yesterday, like as a parent, as a parent, I see my kids as babies. Like I still see them in their first, like, whatever. Like I still see Orion as the baby in the NICU. I still see Minna as the baby at Kinder Music. I still see Maggie as this tiny little baby from the hospital. I don't see them as kids. And so I've always made excuses as to why they can't do things. They're too little, you know, they're still kids. Let them be kids. And I'm all for letting my kids be kids. I don't put my kids in a lot of school activities because I want them to be kids. And that's not saying that if you put your child in a school activity that they can't be kids. But my kids were never really interested in any of the stuff like that. And when they were only interested in it for a little while, and then they didn't want to do it anymore. Right now, Orion wants to do soccer, and they don't have anything like that at his school. I'm just changing trays. I need a bigger tray because I got a lot of color blocking over here. So we're going to pull out a bigger tray. But they don't offer like soccer stuff like that at Orion's school. So because of that, like, I didn't want to get him into one of the leagues around here that kind of does it off and only does it in the summer and stuff. He didn't seem too interested in that. Like, he wants the full experience of playing soccer. So I told him, you know, when we got the money and everything, we'll see about signing him up for some kind of soccer league. And then as soon as we had the money to do it, he was like, I don't want to. I want to enjoy my summer. So I was like, all right. And so I didn't put them in any day camps or anything like that because we asked them if they'd be interested. Orion said no, of course. Maggie said yes, but only if Orion went. And so, because, of course, Maggie's super shy at first, so she wants somebody there that she knows. And she didn't want to go, and I was like, okay. So I guess we're just going to chill out at the house this summer. So I've been trying to do my best with, like, you know, keeping them preoccupied with, like, games and stuff like that. And you guys have sent them enough books and everything else that they have been keeping themselves pretty occupied for the summer. But it wasn't until yesterday that I got hit with that little dose, that little nugget, that the kids are no longer babies. The kids are growing up really quickly. And the kids are now 10, 11, and 16. Minna will be 17 next month on the 6th. And I'm like, it's time for them to start learning some responsibilities. Now, by the time I was their age, I feel like my generation had to be, we were almost forced to grow up too fast. We didn't have a childhood because we were taking care of our siblings and stuff like that. Now, I didn't have to take care of all my siblings, but I also didn't get a whole lot of what I would call a childhood. I wasn't allowed to go outside and play whenever I wanted to and do the things that I wanted to do because, you know, we had to cook and clean and take care of the house. And so I didn't want that for my kids. I wanted, of course, like most parents, I want it better for my kids. So I just let them be kids. I let them do pretty much whatever they wanted. Within reason, of course. I'm not going to let them go out here and, like, you know, do drugs or something. But for the most part, like, if they woke up that day, they got to choose what they wanted to do for the day. And so, like, today, after I'm finished here, we're going to go out for ice cream. We were supposed to go to the skate park, but apparently somebody vandalized it, so it is down for repairs. And I'm like, great. Well, if nothing else, we can at least go get ice cream. So I'm going to take the kids out for ice cream when I'm done here. But realizing that the kids are no longer babies anymore, I'm like, I do need to start teaching them, which has been my biggest fear, is to teach them to take care of themselves, because in a few years they will be taking care of themselves. They won't be home forever. And so I'm like, it's time for them to start taking care of themselves. So we gave them chores, which they already had. Like, Orion already had a chore, which was feeding the dogs. He sucked at it. And I'm not gonna lie, he sucked at it. Having to constantly remind him to feed the dogs was kind of a pain. So we decided that we were going to have him work with the ferrets. Now, we got the ferrets partially because Orion's allergic to cats, and they are like cat-like animals. So I was like, why don't we get ferrets? That seemed like a great idea. Nope, it was not a great idea. We love the ferrets, though. We love the ferrets. But they're like cats, but not really. Like, cats don't essentially steal your stuff. And so we have the little crackhead ferret, Anna, and then we have Gumball, Mr. I'm going to eat all the dog food. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, it's time to start giving you guys more responsibilities. You guys are getting older. There's no reason why you guys can't do these things. And Mr. Coffee, he just kind of backs what I do. He works too much to understand what the hell's going on in this house half the time. And I try to tell him, but again, he works too much. So, I kind of make these decisions on my own and then tell him about it later. It's always kind of been like this, where he works and then I take care of the stuff at the house and then explain it to him when he gets home. And so I explained to him that, you know, okay, we're going to have Orion start feeding the ferrets. And he's like, you know, well, that's cool. How is he doing with that? And I'm like, he's surprisingly doing pretty good with the ferrets. Like, he likes helping with the ferrets. And Maggie will hold Gumball, because if you don't hold Gumball while you clean the cage, Gumball will jump out and run off. So Maggie will hold Gumball while Orion cleans out the litter boxes and make sure the cage bedding is good and everything else. And he was doing pretty good with it until the Sunday. Apparently he used the last of the soupy, and of course he can't make the soupy because you got to use like the blender. And sorry, I'm trying to push this over in a good spot. Stay hydrated, folks. So he's sitting there and he forgets to make, Mr. Coffee forgets to make soupy. So Monday comes, Mr. Coffee is at work, and Orion comes and wakes me up at like 9:30, and he's like, Mom. And I'm like, yes, Orion. He goes, I need to make soupy for the ferrets. And I'm like, what? And he's like, I need you to make soupy for the ferrets. And I'm like, why? I just made some. Now take it, I'm half asleep, so I don't know what the hell he's talking about. I just wanted to go away because I'm asleep. And he's like, Mom, no, I need you to make more soupy. And I'm like, oh, I took the trash out yesterday. He's like, Mom, you don't even take the trash out. Okay, what do you want? And he's like, Mom, soupy for the ferrets. And I'm like, oh, yeah, the ferrets are fine. He's like, Mom, wake up. I'm like, okay, I'm up. What do you need? What's wrong? And he's like, I need you to make soupy for the ferrets because Daddy didn't make it yesterday. Now, this is the second week in a row that Mr. Coffee has not made the soupy for the ferrets, because you do have to use the blender. It's not something that the kids can do. So I'm like, God dang it. So I messaged him and was like, why didn't you make soupy for the ferrets? I should make you bring your tail home and make the soupy, because this is the second week in a row now that he's forgotten to make it. And I'm like, you son of a... So I was like, fine, I'll make it. So I come downstairs and I go to make the soupy, and I went, hold up a minute. I look outside. Now, we are in summer, which means battle mode for the dog park. Now, not a lot of the residents around here use the dog park, okay? We are one of the few that religiously use the dog park daily. And so every once in a while, you'll get people that live around here that know about the dog park that will come and use the dog park. And of course, they don't clean up after their pet and anything else. They just bring their dog over to run around freely and pee and poop wherever, and then they just don't clean it up, which, you know, irritates the piss out of me, because then, you know, the complex is looking at everybody here that lives here, and it's like, y'all need to clean up after your pets. And we're like, people who don't live here are the ones that aren't cleaning up after their pets, but whatever. So anyways, but now they have somebody that's like comes in once a week to make sure that the dog park is already cleaned and everything else. So that's a plus. They finally, I guess, decided that it's time to start taking the property seriously, I guess. I don't know. I just know that they have somebody come in and clean the dog park now, and I'm like, I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at it. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay. Bloop. So I see that there's nobody in the dog park, and I'm like, okay, sir, you're about to learn how to walk dogs. And he's like, wait, what? I'm like, you're about to learn how to walk dogs. Get those leashes. Let's go. So I decide it's now time to teach Orion how to train with the dogs. Now, I've trained my dogs very well. They know their basic commands. They still have minds of their own, so they have bodily autonomy. They will do what they want to do, but they're more likely to listen to me than anybody else, because, you know, I've been working with them for years, like their entire life pretty much. So if I give them a command or tell them to do something, obviously they're going to listen. So I was like, but it's time to teach Orion how to walk the dogs. Orion wants to do weight training, so I thought it'd be a great idea, because somebody brought it up not too long ago about why don't I let the kids, and I'm like, because the dogs are way too big for the kids. But my rule is, as long as you're bigger than one of the dogs, I should be able to let you walk the dogs and not be too fearful of it. I don't have to worry about, like, Killian dragging Orion through wherever, because Killian and Orion or Orion's a little bit heavier than Killian, because Orion's 106 pounds, where Killian's just 99 pounds. And though that little 5 pounds shouldn't matter, it does. It really does. And it might not be 5 pounds. It might be more than that. But, you know, I don't math, so let's not moving right along. I think I stroked out again just now. Anyways, so I'm sitting there, right? And I'm like, okay, grab the leashes. There's nobody in the dog park. We're going to teach you how to walk the dogs. And he's like, okay. And of course, he's scared. Orion has very minimal interaction with the dogs. He will play with them, but for the most part, he's not a dog person. He's very much a cat person. So he will pet and play with them, but it's like the most awkward encounter you'll ever see. Like, he pets them like he's never petted a dog before. And I'm like, dude, these dogs have been with you for at least the last 8 or 9 years. Why do you still treat them like you don't know them, like they're strangers? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, why are you petting him like that? Like, he's like his fingers aren't touching the dog, but his palm is. And I'm like, dude, you literally out here acting like these dogs have not been in the house with us for years. And so he puts the leashes on the dogs, and I'm like, okay. Now I show him how to hold the dogs so that if they try to pull, he can pull back. Now, we use pinch collars on the dogs. I don't want to hear anybody's opinion on that. That's what is best for my dogs. If you don't like it, unfortunately, you're just going to have to sit salty. So I teach him how to put the collars on so you're not choking or poking them in the eye with the pinch collar. And so he gets the collar on. He goes, okay, you're going to hold on to them with me? I'm like, no, you can hold on to the dogs. And he's like, oh God. And so then I open the door, and the dogs don't move. They just look back at me. And he's like, what? Why won't they move? Are they like reindeer? And he's like, he's up here acting like the dogs are on a sleigh and he's Santa. He's got a leash in each hand going, go. I'm like, what? Are you on a horse? What are you doing? And he's like, they won't move. Tell them to go. But yeeking them in the back with the leash is not going to make them go. That's why they're looking at you like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, how do I get them to go? I'm like, tell them to go and start walking. So he goes, oh, go. And the dogs look back at me again like, what was that? What is happening here? Like, what happened to the hierarchy here? Why are we, what is happening? And I look at the dogs, I'm like, let's go. And then they start walking. He's like, oh, because it scared the crap out of him, because he didn't realize that, the dogs are very strong when they go out for walks. And if you don't have a good hold on them, they will pull you, which is another reason for the pinch collars. So I'm like, okay. So he's walking, and Killian gets super excited because he saw a bird in the dog park. So he starts trying to run, and Orion starts trying to run with him. I'm like, don't run with him. Pull back on the collar and tell him no. He goes, no, Killian. And Killian's not paying him any kind of attention because the dogs are used to my firm voice. So I'm not like, go, Killian, go. I'm just like, no, you have to be firm. Killian, no. And Killian slowed down. He looked back at me and he started walking. He's like, okay. And I'm like, what? Okay. And at first I didn't think anything of it. And I was like, why is he saying okay like that? Whatever. It is what it is. We get up to the dog park and he has a tear fall down his face. And I'm like, Orion, what's wrong? And he's like, I don't want to yell at the dogs. I'm like, who's yelling at the dogs? He's like, you yell at the dogs. I'm like, I yell at the dogs? When do I yell at the dogs? He's like, you just yelled at Killian. When did I? Wait, what? And I'm like, I yelled at Killian? When did I yell at Killian? He goes, just now. I'm like, sir, there is a difference between being firm and yelling. So I was like, being firm. Daisy, go. Yelling, Daisy, get out of here. I'm like, there is a difference. I'm like, you are going to have to learn how to be firm. Firm meaning not letting the dogs pull you and giving them commands. You can't do that in a normal voice. They won't respond because they are used to my voice, which comes off as very firm. And he's like, so you're not yelling at the dogs? No, dude, I'm not yelling at them. I'm letting them know that I'm giving them a command that they need to listen to. And he's like, I don't know anything about the dogs. I just like playing with them. I know, dude. I know. So I was like, but it's not yelling, I promise. I'm not just sitting out here yelling at the dogs. It's called being firm. And he's like, okay. I'm like, now try it. It's not going to hurt their feelings. No, Orion, it's not going to hurt their feelings. Orion's a very sensitive kid. He doesn't like, he doesn't like confrontation and stuff like that, which drives me nuts because confrontation is something that everybody has to deal with in life. So I want to get him to the point where that uncomfortable feeling you get from confrontation doesn't make him as uncomfortable. I'm one that I don't care about confrontation. I care about handling my business. So I'm like, okay, let's practice. So we're at the dog park, and I'm like, now tell Killian to sit. He's like, sit down, Killian. I'm like, notice how Killian is not sitting down. He's like, yeah. I'm like, now I want you to be firm. Don't yell. Be firm and say sit. He's like, okay. He looks at Killian. He's like, I'm sorry, buddy. He's like, sit. I'm like, nope. See, you yelled at him, which is why he backed away from you. You're not supposed to yell. He's like, I'm hurting his feelings. I'm like, oh my God, kid, no. No. You're not hurting his feelings. You just scared him because you yelled. Don't yell. Be firm. Okay. Killian, sit. And I'm like, are you a street fighter? What are you doing? Ryan, be firm, not a cartoon character. And he's like, sit. And Killian sits down and looks at him. And he's like, it worked. Mom, it worked. And of course, him yelling that it worked scared Killian. And Killian just kind of ran off. I'm like, yes, dude, it worked. Being firm is different than yelling. He's like, wait. So all those times that I thought you were yelling at me, no, I wasn't yelling at you, sir. It's called being firm. Notice how you listened? He's like, yeah. That's called being firm. That's not called yelling. He's like, so you don't really yell? No. I'm just being firm when I ask you guys to do things. And he's like, oh, wait. Are you treating us like dogs? Wait, what? How? What? No. He's like, but you said be firm with the dogs, but you're being firm with us. And I'm like, Ryan, I'm not treating you like a dog. I'm treating you like a child. He's like, but then why are you treating the dogs like children? Ryan, you're just going to confuse yourself here, dude. Don't do it. He's like, but if you're being firm when you tell us to clean our rooms and stuff, and you're not yelling, and you're also being firm with the dogs, either that means the dogs are being treated like human children, or we're being treated like dogs. And I'm like, oh my God, I hate it here. I'm like, Orion, look, listen. Being firm just means putting your foot down. That means you're serious about the words that you were saying. You stand by the words you were saying, and you want people to know that you are not playing. So that's what being firm is. Yelling is what people do when they feel like they're not being heard and they're irritated. I don't yell. I am firm. He's like, does Dad yell? Dad yells. Mr. Coffee is a yeller. He not often, very rarely, but when it comes to the dogs, he more so yells than anything, which is why they don't respond as well to him. And I'm like, yes, Dad will yell at the dogs. And he's like, but he's not firm with us. I'm like, no, Daddy's good cop. Mommy's good and bad cop. And he's like, oh, okay. Are y'all cops now? No. Oh my God. No, Ryan. No. Just watch the dogs. And he goes, what am I watching for? Poop. And he's like, why am I watching them poop? Is that why they watch us poop? And I'm like, no, sort of, yes, but Ryan, just look out into the thing and watch the dogs. And he's like, okay. So he's looking out. And he's like, Mom, Daisy's pooping at 3 o'clock. And I'm like, technically it's 4:15, but whatever. Daisy wasn't even at 3 o'clock. She was more so at like 5 o'clock. And sorry, that's my watch that's dinging. But I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay. Get the scoop so that we can clean up after the dogs. And he's like, the scoop? What are we getting scoops for? And I'm like, so we can clean up after the dogs. And he goes, but why? What do you mean, but what? Sir! I'm like, when you have a pet, you have to clean up after it. It's your responsibility when you get that pet. Just like a child, that you're taking responsibility of that pet. So you always want to make sure you clean up after the pet. And he's like, how do we clean up the pee? You don't clean up the pee, dude, just the poop. So do you clean up after me and Maggie? I'm like, cleaning your bathrooms is cleaning up after you guys. He goes, but you don't clean our bathrooms. No, you clean your bathrooms because you're old enough to do so. And he's like, Well, I think Daisy and Killian are old enough to start cleaning up after themselves. They've been here for quite some time, and I'm sure they've watched you do it for a while now, so they can clean up after themselves. What? No, that's not at all how that works, sir. No. So, explaining to him that he has to clean up after the dogs because they're his responsibility, and that's your responsibility when you walk the dogs, is to clean up after them. No, you don't have to pick up pee. That's impossible. You just pick up poop. And he's like, with my hand? No, they have a scoop system over here. You pick up the scoop system. The scoop system is like literally like a little metal shovel on a stick with a rake on a stick, and you use it to put the poop into the trash can with. And he's like, oh. Now, Orion hasn't even so much as swept a floor before, so he's very awkwardly holding it, and I'm like, okay, you don't want to you don't want to swing it around because somebody has used this to clean up dog crap with, okay? So we're not going to play with it. You're just going to watch for the dogs to go to the bathroom, clean it up, and then put the rake system back where you found it. And he's like, oh, okay. So he cleans up after Daisy, and he goes, why isn't it Killian pooping? Killian is a free-range pooper, so Killian won't poop on the leash. And he goes, is he on his leash? No, we took the leash off. Okay, well, how do I get him to poop? You can't make them poop. They poop when they want. Like, can I tell you to poop right now and you'll just poop? He goes, maybe. Okay, you're also not a dog. So with dogs, you can't tell them to poop. Like, there's no command that you're just like, poop, and the dog will immediately just squat and poop. And so, like, I'm trying to explain to him that, no, you can't just make the dogs poop on demand. Like, our dogs don't work like that. Some dogs probably can. Mine's do not. So I'm like, no, very much so you just wait. And he's like, well, how long do I have to wait here? And I'm like, technically, you shouldn't be waiting staring at them, because they're just kind of running around playing right now. They will poop when they're ready. And he goes, so you just stand out here and wait for them? Well, yeah. And he's like, oh, well, that's boring. And I'm like, yeah, it's not meant to be fun. Not for you anyways. So I was like, yeah, so we're going to go sit down. So we went and sat down on the bench, and we sat there, and we were talking about, like, the dogs and, like, commands and stuff like that. And Killian decides it's finally time to poop, because Killian not only is a free-range pooper, he also wants you nowhere near him when he is pooping. Killian is one of those dogs. He will not come into the bathroom with you whenever you're going to the bathroom. He will lay in front of the door so you can't get out, but he's not going to come into the bathroom. Like Daisy, she will lay in your lap while you're going to the bathroom. Killian is not about that life. So I'm like, yeah, no. Very much, the dogs do not poop on demand. You just have to wait for it, and Killian won't poop if you're standing anywhere near the area that he likes to poop. So you pretty much have to wait for him to get ready to go to the bathroom, and then, clean up after he's done. He's like, okay. So Daisy goes to the bathroom. He goes over and cleans it up, puts it in the little trash can that they have assigned for it. He's like, I did it. I'm like, good job. He's like, what about Killian? I'm like, Killian's gonna go, don't worry. I'm like, Killian does a thing when he goes to the bathroom, so you want to watch. Because Killian will only poop in the corners of the dog park. He will never poop in the center. No dog that I know of since I've lived here has ever pooped in the center of the dog park. They always poop on the sides. So I'm like, imagine the field cut off into 4 slices, okay? I'm like, so you're going to look at the bottom 2 slices, and 9 times out of 10, he's going to poop on the right-hand side. And you'll know when he's going to poop because he will sniff an area, turn around, walk the other way, then turn back around and walk back the other way, then turn back around, and then he'll make a circle, and then he'll hunch himself over and go to the bathroom. And he goes, okay. He's like, wait, is he doing it now? I'm like, that's what he's doing right now. So he watched Killian as he, did his little thing, and he goes, oh God, is he pooping in a circle? Now, Killian likes to summon the poop gods, and I don't know if anybody else's dog does this, but Killian likes to rotate rotisserie chicken style when he poops. And we call it summoning the poop gods. And I'm like, yes, he's getting ready to poop. And so he'll poop in a circle, and where most dogs just poop in a pile and go on about their business, Killian is super extra. He summons the poop gods. So Orion is sitting there like, why is he like this? Why is he doing this? And I'm like, dude, look, listen, I don't know. I don't know why he's like this. I don't know why he's doing this. It's just what he does. That's just what he does. And he's like, oh, okay. So he goes, well, how do I clean that up? I'm like, you just find all the little pellets. So he goes over and he cleans up after Killian. He goes, we're done, right? And I'm like, yeah. He starts walking back home and I'm like, whoa. What about the dogs? He goes, oh yeah. So he grabs the leashes. He's like, okay, come on, dogs. And I'm like, you got to whistle. Then I remembered, Orion can't whistle. If you've made it to this point in the video, can you whistle? Can you whistle? Now, when I whistle, I blow air out. When Mr. Coffee whistles, he blows air in, or he sucks air in. I guess you can't blow it in, but he sucks air in when he whistles. It's the weirdest thing watching Mr. Coffee whistle. When you whistle, if you can whistle, do you whistle blowing out or blowing in? Or sucking in, I guess. How many of you had to whistle to figure that out? So I was like, oh crap, you can't whistle. He goes, he makes a weird noise, okay, that sound exactly like a whistle. And the dogs kind of looked at him like, what the hell was that? And so the dogs are just looking like, what? And he makes the noise again, and Daisy starts doing head tilts. And then she runs up to him and starts head tilting in front of him, trying to figure out what the hell kind of noise is that he's making that sounds like a whistle. Killian, on the other hand, is sitting there living out his best life, okay? Killian is living his best life, and Killian is not caring about whatever sound is coming out of Orion's face. He's just like, that sounds weird, whatever. And he kept just doing what he was doing. All right, so we're going to bring this up a little bit over here. We're going to do some of this section. I don't know how much of this section we're going to get done, but we're going to try to get some of this section done. So we're just going to slide it down a little bit more. Make sure you guys can see. You guys can see? Good. All right. Stay hydrated. So I'm like, okay. So Killian's over there living out his best life. Daisy is looking at him like, what the hell noise is coming out of your face? And I whistle and Killian starts running towards us. And I'm like, tell him that he's going walkies. He's like, Killian, you want to go walkies? Killian stops and looks at him. And I'm like, now tell him we're going to the mailbox. Now, I don't know what Killian's obsession is with going to the mailbox. But Killian will stop dead in his tracks no matter what he's doing if you tell him he's going to the mailbox. Take it. In all of my years that I've had this dog, he has never gotten anything in the mail. Not like addressed to him or anything like that. Like he's gotten like treats and stuff in the mail. But usually that comes from y'all and he doesn't go to that mailbox. So he never gets anything in the mail. But for some reason he loves going to the mailbox. And I'm like, whatever gets you out of this dog park. So Orion calls out and lets him know that we're going to the mailbox, and he bolts towards us, and Orion gets scared because he's like, he's coming so fast, Mom, he's gonna run into me. I'm like, he's not gonna run into you. Mom, he's gonna run into me. I'm like, why are you standing there then? And he's like, oh yeah. So he just kind of moves, and Killian doesn't even come anywhere close to where he was at. He stops right as he gets to the gate. He waits for his leash to be put on. So I open the gate before his leash is on, and he doesn't move. But Orion gets scared. He goes, Mom, no. And I'm like, what? And he goes, you opened the gate. I'm like, yeah, and notice neither one of them moved. And he's like, oh, wait, why didn't they move? Because you didn't tell them to. And he's like, wait, what? I'm like, you have to tell them to leave the dog park. They're not going to just leave. And he's like, wait, so if the gates are open, they won't leave? No. And he's like, that's cool. I'm like, sure. And he's like, how do they know not to do that? I'm like, because I taught them not to do that. He goes, Mom, you're a good teacher. Thanks. Okay. Okay. And so I was like, put their leashes on. So he put Daisy's leash on first, and then she walked towards the gate and sat down. He put Killian's leash on. He walked towards the gate and sat down because that's what they're trained to do. When you put their leashes on, they're not to bolt out of the gate, even though it's open. They are to sit and wait to be told to leave. And again, everyone, and if you've been here for a while, you already know that they will leave if they really, really want to. They will leave, but for the most part, no, they don't typically leave, you know, without there being like something that got their attention. And even if they did try to leave, by this time they're already on their leashes, so it doesn't matter. They're just going to yoke themselves because they're trying to get out of the dog park. So he gets their collars or their leashes on, and he's like, okay, what do we do now? I'm like, we're going to take them for their walk. And he's like, wait, but they just spent however long in the dog park. And I'm like, yeah, so? He's like, now we got to walk them? I'm like, Orion, these dogs have a lot of energy. Just like you and Maggie, you have a lot of energy. He goes, wait, but you don't walk me and Maggie. I'm like, because you're not dogs, sir. And he's like, oh. I'm like, okay, you have to understand. He's like, so dogs are a lot like kids. I'm like, sort of, but you're not animals. You're humans that understand English. He's like, dogs don't understand English? They understand whatever language you speak. And he's like, so if I speak Spanish? I'm like, that is not a language you speak. So no, they're not going to understand Spanish. So if you tell them something in Spanish, they're not going to understand. And he goes, what if I say no in Spanish? I'm like, Orion, no, sir. No in Spanish is still no. They'll just think it's English. And he goes, so they're smart enough to know that no in Spanish is also no in English. I'm like, no. I'm like, let's walk. Let's just go walk, okay? Are you ready to walk, buddy? And he's like, all right, let's go walk. So he grabs the leashes, and the dogs are standing there, and he doesn't say anything to him. He just starts trying to walk, and then gets like, it's like a cartoon when you try to move something heavy and it won't budge. He went to go try to move without telling the dogs to leave, and I'm standing there watching, okay? I know what he's about to do. And he like gets yanked because neither dog moves, and he's like, oh, wait. He starts pulling at them, and they're like, you know, pulling their necks back like, what are you doing? I'm like, Orion, what are you doing? He's like, come on, dogs. I'm like, one, that's not a command. He's like, what? And I'm like, that's not a command, sir. And he's like, oh, come. And both dogs start walking. He's like, oh. I'm like, yeah, but also don't forget to close the gate. You don't want somebody else's dog to come in here and run out of the dog park. He's like, well, if their dog is trained not to leave, I'm like, not everybody's dogs are trained. Plus, whenever you're in the dog park, you always want to leave it in better condition than you left or than you came to it in. So if the gate is open, just make sure it's closed when you leave. Just because other people choose to make the decision to not do as they're told doesn't mean that you also have to make those same decisions. You can do and be however you want. And if you choose to be a good human and follow the rules, then maybe people will start following your lead. He's like, oh, so I could be a trendsetter. Sure. Yeah. Yep. That's exactly what that meant. Yep. And he's like, oh, okay. So he goes and closes the gate. He goes, come on, dogs. And the dogs start walking. And then there's like an intersection. So you have a sidewalk that goes this way, you have a sidewalk that goes this way, and then there's a dog park. And so the dogs stop at the intersection, and they look back at him. And he goes, why are y'all looking at me walk? And I'm like, that's not a command. And he's like, oh, come on. And the dogs they get up, but then they don't know which way to go. So each dog goes in a separate direction. He goes, wait, what are they doing? I'm like, you didn't tell them which way to go. He's like, I gotta do everything for them? I'm like, you're not doing everything for them. They need to know which direction you're going. He goes, I don't even know what direction I'm going. I was hoping that they would know which way you usually walk them. I'm like, that's the thing. I usually walk them both ways. So, yeah, you are going to have to walk and figure out which way you want to go. Do you want to take them on a long walk or a short walk? And he looks at them and then looks and is like, where's the long walk? And I'm like, the long walk is you go up by the playground, go up the sidewalk, and then come back down towards the house. He's like, what's the short walk? I'm like, you take the sidewalk here right behind the house. And he's like, oh, so it's not that long of a walk. I'm like, no, you're not going on a super duper long walk, which is a walk around the entire complex. You're just walking in a short distance because that's going to wear them out because of the heat and everything. He's like, oh, the way I have to break this down, y'all, I'm not joking. This was like this whole story was about 15-20 minutes, okay? So I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, which way would you like to go? And he goes, I want to go on the long walk. And I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah. So I was like, okay, now we'll give you a heads up. They are going to stop and pee. He goes, but we just came out of the dog park. Yeah, so? He goes, how do they still have anything left in them? I don't know. They're dogs. They don't pee or poop like all of it out like we do. And he's like, oh, is because they don't have tablets? That's not, no, sir. Dogs don't use tablets when they go to, like, you didn't see the dog pull out a newspaper and try to read the newspaper while I was taking a dump. No, that dogs don't do that. And he's like, okay. So he's like, okay, I want to go the long way though. And I'm like, just tell them that that's the way you're going. He goes, long walk. And both dogs start going towards the direction of where they would go for a long walk. So we're walking around and he's like, Mom, this is easy. I'm like, is it though? Is it? Because my edges don't say it's easy. My edges are gone, okay? But walking them, yes, can be easy until they see something that they want and they try to pull you. And he's like, oh no, what if they see another dog? I'm like, more than likely they're not going to care. And he's like, they won't chase the dog? No, not usually. And he's like, oh, okay. And Sweet Potato, which is a brown lab that lives over by our house, you will see Sweet Potato on the long walk because their parents, like the owners of the dog, will put it on a leash to run around their front yard. And so Sweet Potato was out, and Sweet Potato starts barking, and Orion freaks out. And he's like, should we run? Why are you running? Sweet Potato's on a leash. And he's like, Sweet Potato? What kind of name is that for a dog? I'm like, look, that's not my business, okay? I just know the dog's name. It's only because of the dog always barking and them yelling Sweet Potato at the goddamn dog, okay? So I don't know why the dog is like it is. Just don't worry about it, because look at our dogs. They're unfazed. They don't care. They're unbothered. They don't really care about what Sweet Potato has going on or why it's barking. They just want to walk, okay? He's like, oh, okay. The dogs are giving you a great lesson in minding your own business. So let's try that. So he keeps walking. Daisy stops to pee, and he tries to keep walking because he doesn't pay attention. He didn't see her stop. So then it yanks his arm again. He's like, ow. And I was like, well, she stopped to pee, dude. He's like, oh, what do I do? You stop. He's like, oh, so she can pee. Yes. So Daisy finishes peeing. She gets up. He's like, how do you know when Daisy's peeing or pooping? He's like, Killian lifts his leg at least. Daisy doesn't lift her leg. I'm like, Daisy is a female. She doesn't typically lift her leg. And he's like, oh, so girls don't lift their legs. I'm like, not usually. Not any of the female dogs that I've had in my lifetime have ever lifted their leg. That's usually a boy thing. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying none of the dogs I have given me that experience. So I was like, no, mostly the time boys will lift their leg. And he's like, oh, okay. So Daisy finishes and he keeps going. And then Killian stops and he goes, okay, I got to stop. So he stops. Killian lifts his leg to go pee. And he goes, but then they both hunch their back to poop. And I'm like, yes, because, they both have the same equipment to poop, which is a butthole. And he's like, oh, I guess that kind of makes sense. I'm like, yes. So as we're walking, I start telling him about some of the other commands he can give the dogs, like walk slow, slow down, stuff like that, teaching him like the different commands and things you can get them to say and do. Because of course the kids know the basics, and they know that if somebody is coming after them, to drop the dogs, like to let the dogs go after the person. So he's like, has our dogs ever attacked anyone? I'm like, no. Has our dogs ever bitten anyone? Yes. He's like, what? Wait, what? I'm like, they've bitten people before. He's like, who? I'm like, when we lived in PA, they used to, Killian bit Uncle Matt. And he's like, oh yeah, Uncle Matt. I'm like, yeah, he bit Uncle Matt once because Uncle Matt came into our backyard to fix the fence. And Killian didn't know why he was there and he bit him. But Killian was also a puppy, so Killian was biting everybody. So I was like, yeah, they have bitten somebody before. And Orion's like, has Daisy ever attacked anybody? I'm like, no, not really. Daisy's not the attack type dog. And he goes, what if somebody was breaking into our house? And I'm like, at that point, she probably would attack them. And he's like, oh, okay, so she like defends us. I'm like, sure. He's like, what if we attack somebody? I'm like, wait, what? And he's like, is it like reverse psychology, like doggy? Like they see us attack someone and then they try to stop us from attacking someone? I'm like, no. no, that's not at all how that works. One, why are we attacking people? We are not a violent household. He's like, I know, but still, like, what if somebody was like coming after me and I attacked them? Would Daisy then attack me? And I'm like, no, she would attack the person that you're attacking. He's like, oh, so no matter so if I beat up on Maggie, I'm like, one, I don't know what your obsession is wanting to hit your sister, but please stop. You cannot hit your sister. There's nothing you can say or do that's going to make it okay to hit your sister. And he's like, dang it. And I'm like, oh my God. And then he's like, she's always coming in my room and messing with my stuff. I'm like, that is not a reason to attack your sister. And so we make it back to the house right as Mr. Coffee gets home. And Mr. Coffee's like, whoa, look at you. He's like, he's walking the dogs. I'm like, yeah, I am teaching him how to walk the dogs. And he's like, that's really cool. Now it didn't take this long to walk the dogs. Mr. Coffee just happened to be coming home at this time. And so I was like, yeah. So I was explaining when Mr. Coffee got home about how he's going to start letting Orion walk the dogs and take the lead with the dogs. And he's just going to be back there for backup. You're just there to support. Don't touch the leash. Don't do anything. He needs to learn how to handle the dogs. And he's like, okay. So, we took the dogs out for an extra walk a few hours later, and Mr. Coffee took Mr. Orion out with them. And Orion loves spending time with his dad, of course, because Orion wants to be just like Mr. Coffee. And where Mr. Coffee, like I asked Mr. Coffee last night, I'm like, when we lived in PA, Mr. Coffee's biggest thing was that we weren't making enough money to do anything, and when the money we did make, we didn't have anything to show for it. We didn't have our own house, and we had this picture in our head of the white picket fence. You buy a house and have your family, and you have all these beautiful things in your house, and we never had that because we were broke, and so we didn't really have anything to show for all the money that he had made because it all went to bills. I'm like, the lights are on, that's what we have to show for it. And so now we actually have stuff to show for it. So like I was asking him, like, are you finally happy with your life? And he's like, what do you mean? Mr. Coffee's always talked about not being happy with where he's at in life because he never really had anything to show for it. And I'm like, look at you now. Look at your house, look at your family. You finally have something to show for it. Like, does that make you happy? And he goes, honestly, I never thought about it. And then I showed him the picture of Minna that she had sent, and he's like, oh my God. I'm like, yeah. Our oldest child is going to be a senior in high school. He's like looking around at the house and everything, and he goes, I guess we have a lot more to show nowadays than we used to. And I'm like, yeah, we do. And he's like, he's always so busy that he never stops to think about these things. So like him getting that same like moment that I had when I first saw Minna, and he was realizing that the kids aren't babies anymore, seeing Orion walk the dogs. Maggie's taking charge, and she started feeding and watering the dogs and helping with the ferrets, and they're doing more stuff around the house. He finally got that realization that he finally got the life he wants, or he's wanted for so long, minus the fact that we don't own a house. It's just cheaper for us right now to rent, because if something breaks, we don't have to necessarily pay for it because we pay rent for somebody else to pay for it. So like if the heater breaks or the pipes burst, we don't have to pay for that because we rent, so somebody else is going to pay for it. So right now it's just cheaper for us to not own a house versus renting. And where renting can suck because you do then have to wait for somebody to come fix the stuff in your house, you necessarily don't have to pay out of pocket for it. So it's just, that's like the last thing on our bucket list, is that one day we would like to own a house. And where I'm not the keenest on owning a house in North Dakota, because this is not my forever home and I will not be here forever. I don't know why my dream okay, if you've made it this far, another question. When you were growing up, was there ever a dream place that you wanted to live and you told yourself that you always wanted to retire, or you always wanted to spend your end of days there? Because for some reason, Maine is that place for me. I don't know what it is about Maine or why I want to be there so bad, but something inside of me tells me that that's where I'm supposed to be. And it's been like this my whole life. And I feel like North Dakota is getting me ready for it, because I know Maine is a cold climate place because you're right off the water and everything else. I mean, hell, I wrote a book all about, like, not all about Maine, but it took place in Maine. And I don't know what it is about Maine, but something about that place, I feel like I'm supposed to live there. And Mr. Coffee's like, yeah, I don't, like, he doesn't mind going to Maine with me. Like, he knows that I've had this obsession with going to Maine since, you know, I was a kid. We've never lived in Maine before. Like, I think it's one of the few states that I've never been to ever. And so I'm like, I want to go to Maine. Now, Mr. Coffee's thing right now is he wants us to take a trip to Washington State. Because one, that's where I was born. And two, he wants us to go and see the Twilight House. And I'm like, I'm not going to say no about that. I'm not going to say no. So yeah, so he's finally realizing that the kids aren't babies anymore. And he was asking, like, you know, we were talking about our day and everything, and how he was telling Orion he was proud of him for walking the dogs and doing so good with walking the dogs and everything. And he was asking, how's Maggie? And I'm like, oh, Maggie's fine. The funny thing is, Maggie's been just fine. Like, I've been a nervous wreck since she's been off her meds. I'm not gonna lie, I've lost a lot of sleep. That first week that she was off her meds, I don't think I slept. I think I stayed up like almost every night for a week, making sure she was still breathing, making sure that, you know, nothing was wrong. Like, I literally would sit outside her bedroom door while she was sleeping. I get a little over paranoid with my bipolar disorder, and I was so worried something was going to happen to her after she got off her meds. But no, Maggie's been perfectly fine. She currently has a cold, but, which also, what kind of nightmare human gets a cold during the winter or the summer? And so I was like, you know, other than the cold, Maggie has been doing just fine. She's been eating, like, she eats 2 breakfasts, 4 lunches, and 3 dinners, okay? She is doing just fine. I'm pretty sure she is obviously packed on some weight since she got off the meds. I don't know what it is about the meds that she was on that made her the way she was, but she's eating fine. She's a normal little kid again. And I almost cried yesterday because, again, I'm not a super emotional parent, but I almost cried yesterday because I re-registered the kids for school. Every year the kids have to be re-registered for school because people around here move around so often that they need to make sure you're in the same, like, schooling district. And so since we haven't moved, obviously the kids will be going to the same schools next year, except for Maggie. Maggie graduated out of elementary school and will now be going to the middle school. And when I tell you that I had a tear roll down my face at the question, do your children have any medical concerns that the school should be made aware of? And I was able to check no for both kids. That's the first time I've ever been able to check no on that box for both kids. I literally was sitting there trying my best not to ugly cry at the fact that this will be the first school year that the kids go to school without any health concerns. Maggie got off her meds in May, so May to June, June to July, August to September, September to October, October to November, November to December. So December this year will mark 6 months off of her meds, and as long as she has no issues by then, she's 100% free and clear for epilepsy. And so I've been like, it's always in the back of my head that something's going to happen. I got to keep an eye on her. I try to keep her in close range. And Maggie's out here just living her best life. She has friends that she loves playing and hanging out with that come to our house and eat popsicles and watch movies and tear up everything and eat popcorn. And she's able to do normal kid stuff. And like, the moment somebody asks her to go to a sleepover, I can actually tell her yes, because she no longer has to wait to take meds or anything of the sort. She can actually go to sleepovers now. And I'm just like, I'm over the moon excited about her future now that, you know, she's not bogged down with the meds. And I'm super lucky at the fact that not all kids have this experience where they have a serious condition that they grow out of. And so I'm very thankful for the fact that she has grown out of this condition and that she's doing a lot better and eating better and playing and just being able to do normal kid stuff. So it's just a great feeling. So everybody here in the coffee house is doing great, minus Maggie and Orion are currently sick. It's not a bad sick, and don't worry, they got tussin last night. It's not a bad sick. Like, they have like that dry cough. I'm guessing it's allergies, because they were tested and they don't have the Rona. So I'm gonna guess it's just allergies because the seasonal change of everything. Like, we are at full force summer. It is like 90 degrees outside currently as we speak, and it's only like 1 or 2 in the afternoon. It's like 1 in the afternoon. So yeah. So the kids are doing great. Mr. Coffee's doing good. He's been working a whole lot. We were talking about my Twitch schedule because Mr. Coffee wants to try to stream with me at least once a week. One, it gives us time to have some time together, and 2, it also helps him stay focused on drawing because he's been drawing a lot more lately. And so he wants to try to stream with me at least once a week if he can, if he feels up to it. So I had to change some things around. So I was like, well, why don't you come stream with me on one of the days. It was going to be Wednesdays, but as we found out last week, he gets super tired and he gets super quiet. So I was like, no, let's try a different day. Well, I switched things around, so I think now Sundays are going to be our days that Mr. Coffee comes up and streams with me if he's not working. So I'm super excited about that. But I think that's all I have for you guys today. So thank you guys so much for all your love and support here on YouTube. I really appreciate it. Thank you for watching. If you have any other questions, comments, concerns about the video, please feel free to put them down in the comment section below. Don't forget the 2 questions. Can you whistle? If you can, do you blow the air in or out? And 2, I don't remember what the second question was. I'm trying to remember, but I don't remember what the second question was. But if you, it's literally, I just said the second question not too long ago. So, yeah. Anyways, I'm going to get out of here because I got to go get lunch for the kids and we're going to go get ice cream and hang out. So I hope you guys are having a wonderful, wonderful day and continue to do so. Remember to stay safe out here in these crafty streets. It's hard out here, y'all. All right, we're just going to do that. And we're going to call it right there. So thank you guys so much for watching. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. I will see you back, I'm sure, at some point. But whether I see you on Twitch or whether I see you on YouTube, either way, I'll see you where I see you. And remember, always remember to be kind to others because you never know what somebody else is going through. Be courteous because it's the right thing to do. And always stay cool. And whether I see you on Twitch or I see you on YouTube, either way, I'll see you when I see you. Bye, guys.